Alright guys and gals, this is Total Recall, the computer game, and this is going to be slightly different to my usual videos on my channel. I normally do in-depth long play and reviews of AMSTRAD CPC games, and during which I always dive into the backstory of the game. And you're still going to get the AMSTRAD Longplay here, but just later on in the video. But there's a very interesting history behind the development of Total Recall that deserves its own separate and special treatment here. But if you're just interested in the AMSTRAD Longplay, then jump to the 30-minute 11 mark on the video for that. But this is a pretty crazy and interesting story in the late 80s and early 90s British computing and gaming history that I've not really seen covered on YouTube before in full. A cautionary tale of being lazy with your film licenses and the hard work of recovering and restoring previously thought of lost forever games. Yes, you're going to see early versions of Total Recall completely different to the ones you eventually played on your Amstrads, Spectrums, Commodores and STs. And the more I dug into this and the more people I spoke to, including several developers and key people from Ocean Software, including Mark R. Jones, Simon Butler, James Higgins, John Meegan and Bill Harbison, that I just got more and more fascinated and found lots of cool stuff. So I hope you enjoy. This has been many months in the making. Now, as for the movie itself the game is based on, well, given the demographics of the viewers of my channel, males over the age of 40, I suspect most of, if not nearly all of you, will have seen it. But this is of course an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, playing the character of Douglas Quaid in the year 2084, where Mars has been colonised. But as is typical of us humans, we've gone and f***ed up another planet and turned that into a right shithole. Anyway, Arnie as Dougie leads a boring life as a construction worker and goes to a place called Recall that can implant realistic false memories of a holiday or an adventure you've not actually been on. Because he's an idiot, he chooses a secret agent on Mars, but something goes wrong during the procedure, or does it? They find his memory has already been erased and suddenly Arnie is now being attacked even by his own wife. And now he's off on a real adventure to Mars. Cue mutant Martians, free-breasted prostitutes, lots of grisly gory deaths, ancient alien reactors, an evil dictator and a villainous plot to kill everyone, and of course a way for Arnie to save the entire planet and end up with his dream girl. You know, pretty standard stuff really. But what an awesome sci-fi movie, a true classic right at the end of the 80s to kick off the 90s, but for me it's one of the last true excessive 80s movies, even though it was released in 1990. But anyway, originally a Philip K. Dick short story called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, directed by Paul Robocop Verhoeven, and something that Arnie himself had a huge hand in bringing to the silver screen, having known about the film being in development hell for a number of years and convincing Carolco to nab the rights for him to star in. He had a huge hand in nearly all aspects of the film, even hiring Verhoeven as director. Schwarzenegger was basically an executive producer on the movie, even getting 15% of the film's profits. To be honest, for me, it's one of his best film roles, and the film still holds up really well today, despite perhaps some just criticisms of its depictions of its female characters. And less said about that ropey 2012 remake film, eh? Anyway, so let's get onto those bloody games. That's what we're here for.
Get ready for a surprise!
Now Ocean, pretty much from 1988 onwards, kept development of their big Christmas releases in-house with their own coding teams. You had Operation Wolf in that year, RoboCop storming the charts the next year in 1989, and staying there forevermore. But for some strange reason in 1990, Total Recall, the 6th highest grossing movie at the US box office that year, was farmed out externally to a new, untested development team called Active Minds. Maybe they got sidetracked putting all their eggs in one basket with RoboCop 2 license after the success of the first game. That film incidentally only reached 25th at the US box office. Even Tango and Cash ranked higher, but that was their big mistake. How and why they chose Active Minds, a new company, is a mystery to some. One must assume they were sweet-talked and sold a load of bullshit by the two owners. Having them also based in Manchester like Ocean, within 10 minutes walking distance perhaps would have helped. But even more so, they had the famous Pickford brothers working for them already on Gaza 2. They had quite the pedigree behind them with games like The Brilliant Feud, Zub, Amarot, Glider Rider and many more. And so begins the story of the first version of Total Recall, an unmitigated disaster from start to, well, as we find out, it was never finished. And it is with huge thanks to Frank Gaskin of the GamesThatWeren't.com website for putting absolutely everything together here and giving me permission to use all this here. And also to Simon Butler, who was the man in the middle of all this at the time that came in to rescue the project, crack the whip and hilariously retold his story on the website, who also kindly gave me his permission to use bits of it here. Thank you, Simon, for also talking to me, and do also go and check out his website dinosaur-pi.co.uk for his brilliant pixel art that you can purchase on prints, canvases, t-shirts and mugs. Anyway, now I'm not just going to read it all out verbatim here, that would just be lazy. I would encourage you to go read it in full for yourself because Simon's story is much better that way. Links are in the description and all that. But I will give you the overview as we watch the actual recovered footage of the C64 and ZX Spectrum versions of the Active Minds Total Recall that I recorded myself. Again, we have Frank from Games That Weren't to thank for his hard work and dedication getting the Commodore 64 version recovered, but we have more to talk about with the recovered Specky version, thanks to Mark R. Jones and his hard work, which we will do in a bit. So Simon was hired in by Active Minds to come work on Total Recall as a secondary artist some several months supposedly into the project, and when he arrived he was shocked by the sheer lack of progress and the lack of ability of his colleagues there. He also wasn't too impressed by the lead artist's attitude and instead preference for smoking weed in the office. It appears the boss there was rather naive and unaware of all this. But thanks to Simon coming in and uncovering this mess and revealing it to the now, one would assume, rather terrified boss, the dope-smoking artist was sacked, the riot act read to the rest of the team, and a new sensible game design and plan was put in place, and things at last started to happen, with more help being brought in. Progress was now being made, but the team was still struggling badly. I'm not sure if they were a relatively young team or just inexperienced, but despite Simon helping to pull out all the stops, a few weeks in, it was still just not happening for the new 2.0 Active Minds Total Recall, which is pretty much the version you see running here in the background. And the Christmas deadline was fast approaching. But what puzzled Simon was why Ocean wasn't more concerned and not banging on their door at Active Minds. It reaches a point where it's got so late the game is never going to make it in time for Christmas, and Simon quits after a blazing row with the boss of Active Minds, and then all gets revealed. And this is a pretty crazy situation. Now, according to Simon's retelling of events, allegedly one of the, shall we say, middle management, as we say these days, in charge of the Total Recall project at Ocean, who shall of course remain nameless here, hadn't been telling the bosses at Ocean, to put it politely, the full story. You see, Gary Bracey, the main man in charge of licensing and development, and most of you should know Gary, he's the one that took the chance on that RoboCop script before the movie was completed the other year, but everyone else ignored, and look how that turned out. Anyway, apparently Gary had been told that all was well and the game was on track for all this time, since Simon took over there. So it was quite the surprise when Simon turned up at Ocean telling him quite the opposite story. A short walk over for Gary to the Active Minds office was of course all it took to confirm Simon's horror story. So if Simon hadn't have quit at Active Minds and then decided to walk over to Ocean and speak to Gary, I mean, he didn't have to. He could have just buggered off to the pub and then gone home and then found work elsewhere. None of this would have been revealed, and God knows what would have happened. Probably yet another utterly terrible movie license game that retro YouTubers would be trotting out on their all-time worst ever game lists, I suspect. Why had that middle management guy been telling Gary something completely different? I mean, one can only speculate. I guess a lot of those types perhaps didn't really care about the quality of the end product. I mean, just as long as any old rubbish got turned over and quota was met and bonuses were pocketed if we're being particularly mean. Or perhaps simply he feared for his job and it was just easier to say to higher ups that all was well and he hoped for the best, that it would all pull through in the end. Who knows? Maybe we will hear his side of the story one day. Somehow, I probably doubt it. So, what happened next? Well, the project was all pulled in-house at Ocean, and I've tried to piece this together from speaking to Simon, James Higgins, the AMSTRAD Spectrum coder, John Meegan, the C64 coder, and Mark R. Jones, who worked on the ZX Spectrum, Atari ST and Amiga graphics. But it's all a bit of a crazy blur, that short time period. And of course, such a long time ago now. I mean, we're talking over 33 years ago. Don't you feel old now? So it appears the Atari ST and Amiga versions from Active Minds carried over and were finished off at Ocean. They look very similar to the recovered final C64 Active Minds one that was abandoned and we've just been watching. And they actually play okay. Mark R. Jones confirmed he worked on the graphics of these at Active Minds and then was contracted at Ocean to continue to work on them there. He also actually remembers them being in shops in December because after finishing at Ocean, he went back home and did some extra work over Christmas at his local computer game shop. He has an amusing story and distinct memory of telling people, "Hey, I worked on this game," at the time there. So yes, it appears the ST and Amiga versions made it out just in time for Christmas. Mark vaguely remembers some celebrations in the office at Ocean about that and seeing them in shops. So there you go. In terms of credits for the ST and the Amiga, we have Fredo Rourke on coding duties for the platforming sections, Bobby Earl for the driving bits, and David Whittaker on the music and sound effects. Although Mark's ZX Spectrum work though was sadly binned, apart from his loading screens which still remains, but he still has his original paperwork from back then, and one from the 6th of November confirms he was being paid by Ocean then, so Total Recall was already brought in-house by then, possibly as early as October. As for the C64 version, James Higgins, the AMSTRAD Speccy coder, thinks the Commodore 64 version may have also just made it out in time for Christmas in December. It was certainly started from scratch like the other two 8-bit versions, with John Meegan on coding duties and graphics by Stephen Thompson. The earliest magazine review I can find for it dates from February in issue 76 of Your Commodore. Even Bill Harbison of Chase HQ fame did some maps for the Commodore version, and I spoke to him too. He wasn't too sure at all, but he kindly put me in touch with John Meegan, who I had a lovely chat with. He says, I remember the game taking about 6 weeks start to finish. Then there must have been about 2 weeks of QA. Both are ludicrously short durations, but meant Christmas could be met. Most versions had to be released around the same time, so James Higgins would most likely be right about the release month. The game was completed insanely quickly as I gave up general life for that time. More or less permanent crunch. I would go across to the Midland gym to shower daily and sometimes go home for a change of clothes. Other than that, I was coding in the office. Ivan asked once more if he was done and dusted with the game before Christmas and wasn't made to work on the game during or after, and John confirms, done and dusted as I recall. I got a decent bonus, so I have no complaints on that front. So that's the best we'll get in regards to the Commodore 64 version, if you're wondering if it made it in time for Christmas. If you're interested in some geeky techie stuff about the C64 version, I asked him if any code was reused from previous games to get the job done quicker. And John says, there was always a degree of code reuse on all projects. The scrolling code and screen layout were always adjusted or optimised between games. The art assets had largely been created, so there was no major delays on the layout front. The sprites were scaled up to make the Arnie character appear larger than life, so that meant some changes to the sprite graphics and a rescale of the backgrounds. Also, the raster multiplexing routine had to change to accommodate the resized sprites. The other major work was having the moving character objects, platforms and bullets. So there you go, if you find that stuff interesting. But what of the other two big 8-bit versions? Sadly, despite all the efforts, the ZX Spectrum and AMSTRAD versions definitely didn't make it out in time for Christmas. James Higgins tells me, I know for sure because I worked on it with Andrew Deakin and Ivan Horn through the Christmas holiday, so it would ship January. We were young, we got fat bonuses. Start to finish, it was a few weeks of work. Andy and Ivan did the scrolling shooting sections. Warren, Lancashire, and I did the puzzle platformer sections. Simon Butler on sprites. I wouldn't work Christmas now, but back then it wasn't a big deal, for me at least. So there you go. It didn't make it out for Christmas. Both the AMSTRAD and Spectrum versions. Oh, and let's not forget Jonathan Dunn doing the music, of course. So there you go. But what helped get it done so quickly was the reusing of existing code from previous games. Specifically for James was his Navy SEALs game.
Ooh, Navy SEALs!
He made on the ZX Spectrum. So that scrolling engine is ripped right from that, he confirmed to me. But why did this take longer than the C64 version? Probably because James was doing two versions at the same time, both the Spectrum and AMSTRAD, which is why it rolled right through Christmas into January. But yeah, it's funny and I suppose rather sad after all that turmoil and fuss that at least two of the major formats at the time, because the ST and Amiga had yet to overtake the 8-bits in sales, I think, at the time, still didn't make it out in time for Christmas. Maybe the Commodore 64 one did, who knows, but I guess we're lucky that we got a game at all, let alone as good as we did on the AMSTRAD CPC, ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64, because what Simon, James, Andrew, Mark, Ivan, Fred and all the others pulled off was actually surprisingly decent, considering. Another part of this tale is the recovery of the ZX Spectrum Active Minds version, which was kinda cool and is a nice little story to end on for this part of the video. So all of the artwork you're seeing here was recovered from Mark R. Jones's micro drives, over 50 of them, after he found them in his mum's attic back in February of 2005. Andrew Barker of the old World of Spectrum forums was able to recover the data, thankfully. But what of the recovered game? Well, this is even more strange. Somehow, a rolling unplayable demo of the Active Minds Total Recall version made by Paul Hubert found its way onto a cover tape of a Spanish games magazine back in the day called Micro Hobby in their November 1990 issue number 204. how and why it got there, absolutely nobody knows. It was only brought to Mark R. Jones's attention in 2016, and he asked an old school friend, Adrian Singh, to see if he could hack it to make it playable. And it is! It's a bit broken and janky, but the first level is most definitely playable, and we were watching footage of it earlier in the video. This was, I believe, the work of coder Paul Hubert. As for the C64 Active Minds recovered version you've seen playing in the background, well, the recovery of this is all thanks to the persistence of Frank from the GamesThatWeren't.com website, tracking down the original coder Mike Lyons, or Leons, back in December of 2022. Mike revealed he only worked on the game at Active Minds for around 3 months, and when they couldn't pay his wages, he left. Luckily, with Frank persisting with him, Mike was eventually able to find an old disc and sent it to him, and then Frank and his team were able to carefully extract the data, which seems to be a near complete level 1 but without sound and music, and a half complete and glitchy level 3. And there you go. So it's great when these lost games get recovered after all these years, and people not only get to see but sometimes actually play them. The Commodore 64 one you can download from the GamesThatWeren't.com website. As for the Specky one, well, that will take you a fair bit of googling, I'm afraid, and searching. I've downloaded it a few years ago and the link I used is long since dead, I'm afraid. So good luck and hunting for that one. But that's pretty much the end of the story here, apart from to look at the final finished Ocean versions, which we will take a look at now in more depth before we get to the AMSTRAD Longplay. So we'll start with the ZX Spectrum version, which of course is very similar to the AMSTRAD CPC one, which we'll see in full later in the video, because it was developed in tandem by coder James Higgins, using a lot of his Specky Navy SEALs code. And Simon Butler tells me that Mark K. Jones, not to be confused with Mark R. Jones here, who we talked about earlier in the video, and he did the loading screen here. Mark K. Jones did some in-game graphics here on the Specky version. Now, given the short time frame, it's amazing what's been pulled off here with an elaborate colour-coded switch maze within an action platformer, broken up with a couple of drivey shooter levels that are rather basic but provide a welcome bit of distraction. I have to say it's rather fantastic with some lovely animated backgrounds like the swirling fans that are not present on the AMSTRAD version, and some additional presentation on the title screens also not present on the CPC. Otherwise, of course, it lacks the additional colour of the AMSTRAD, but aside from that, they're pretty much identical. So it comes down to sort of personal preference on the Spectrum and AMSTRAD versions, if you're in the mood for a bit of puzzling and stuff, or if you're just in the mood for some like shooty action game play type, because yeah, you're gonna have to engage your brain a bit on the Spectrum and AMSTRAD versions, and maybe do some little bit of planning out and mapping if you want to progress. The game does ease you in a little bit. You can run around, punch and shoot things, certainly for the first half of level 1, but by the halfway point you've got to really think about your switches and how to get through the level. So if you want more run and gun type of action, Total Recall on the Specky and AMSTRAD isn't really going to be your thing, and it's also overly tough and difficult with some really tough jumps at points. So yeah, depends what mood you're in. Total Recall on the Spectrum and AMSTRAD might not be the game for you if you're after more instant action. There you go. Anyway, let's move on. Commodore 64. Now, I tested the disc version here, and it had some lovely music and cutscenes, quite eerie and atmospheric actually. It actually doesn't feel like a rush job when it actually was. I mentioned it's the disc version because I'm not sure the tape version would have all this sort of presentation and stuff. Otherwise the load times would be a nightmare. But the game itself, whilst again follows the others with platforming plus the odd driving level, The platforming sections are completely different and unique compared to other versions, and the controls and jumping mechanics will take some getting used to. It plays smoothly and looks okay, if rather overly brown and yellow, but I find myself struggling to say if I like this or not. At times it feels good, other times overly frustrating and hard. The driving levels are notoriously difficult unless you know exactly where to go with a tough time limit. It probably needed more playtesting time and tweaking, this Commodore 64 version. It has its fans and it has plenty of people that hate it as well, but otherwise it's really nicely presented, but I would probably seek out the disc version if you want to play it. Probably a bit more action-packed than the Spectrum and AMSTRAD versions as well. Not so much puzzling. So yeah, if you prefer that kind of style, go with the Commodore 64 version. Maybe the AMSTRAD and Spectrum one may be more cleverly thought out. But there you go. Alright, let's move on to the 16-bit versions now. And we'll start with the Amiga, keeping with the Commodore. So here you have what is essentially the Active Minds Total Recall finished off at Ocean. And it's okay, if somewhat underwhelming. Some issues of slowdown of too many sprites on screen at a time aside, it's pretty standard platforming fare, and the Amiga had tons of platformy, shooty games, and there's nothing much about this to make it stand out from the crowd. Sure, there's a couple of driving levels, but again, there's also nothing special about them either to make it stand out. But like the other versions, they're a welcome change of pace and added value. Otherwise, including presentation between levels, it's all a bit lackluster, and the reviews at the time reflect that with sort of mid to average scores. Probably because it's essentially an Atari ST port. Which leads us nicely onto the ST version, which, as you can see, is basically the same as the Amiga version. But the horizontal scrolling has been changed and, shall we say, downgraded to a fast slide scroll as you get to the end of the screen. And it's a bit weird how the music stops for the vertical scroll to happen. This is definitely the inferior version of the two 16-bit versions. Whilst David Whittaker still does a good job here on the music and surprisingly good sound effects, the Amiga still has the best audio, so I would still stick with the Amiga version here. Going back to the 8-bits again, but to the console. Lastly, we move on to a version of Total Recall that Ocean had nothing to do with, the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, Acclaim Entertainment got the rights to do a console NES port and, weirdly, an LCD game. But sadly, I've not played, so I can't tell you what that's like, but I suppose you can imagine. Oh, and quickly, talking of other versions, there's a mobile game made of the crappy 2012 remake movie, but yeah, we won't be looking at that. Anyway, this NES version, Interplay made this, and as it's typical of an NES game, it can get a little bit weird, but it does loosely follow the plot of the movie. It gets a bit frustrating being pulled into alleyways by weird guides and having to fight your way out. Richter is always on your tail closing in, and on this first level you're supposed to make it to your apartment, get past the glory hole wall, and fight your wife, eventually Laurie, played by Sharon Stone. Except I take too long and Michael Ironside's Richter arrives and he's impossible to pass. Apparently the next level is a cool one set in the subway's X-ray detector where all you see is your skeleton fighting other skeletons, but mostly yes, it's a side-on scrolling platforming shooty game with one top-down racing level. It's okay, if rather fiddly and difficult for the most of it. It's not especially fun, but it's well presented for an NES game with intermission screens and an ending sequence. And there you go. That is all the Total Recall games, apart from the AMSTRAD CPC one, which we shall at last launch into now with the full long play and review treatment that you've all been waiting for. Here we go. So here we are at last with the AMSTRAD CPC long play and review. And this game is well liked amongst Amstrad circles, I guess. But most of them didn't know the troubles behind the scene in getting this game made and released, of course, as we discussed earlier in the video. And what a beautiful loading screen and a really awesome picture of Arnie. I don't know who made this though, whether it was Mark R. Jones or someone else converting his Spectrum work. But like a really, really nice loading screen that. Yeah. Oh, got to get the copyright notices out the way. This was far more prevalent in the early 90s. Loads of them in that WWF game, if you remember that. And here we go. Onto the title screen. And some really nice and memorable music from the always excellent Jonathan Dunn. Perhaps not his best work, but it's one of his most memorable tunes, I think, anyway. So let's get the credits out the way here in terms of like coding and who was behind it. We already discussed it earlier in the video if you watched that, or in case you've skipped forward. So let's do this. Right, platforming bits was done by James Higgins, known as BJ here. As it's written on the title screen. His very first AMSTRAD game for James was the sorcery ripoff The Apprentice for Mastertronic. But his first Ocean game was working with Mike Robocop Lamb, doing Combat School, which was a good education for him to go solo, doing Arkanoid Revenger Daw, which was next, then followed Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge, Bad Dudes vs Dragon Ninja, The Vindicator, and The Untouchables. Total Recall was, unsurprisingly really, his last ever Amstrad game, given the troubles. Graphics of the platforming level were done by Warren Lancashire. Previously, he's done Gemini Wing for Virgin Games and would later do Navy SEALs for the GX4000. Simon Butler would do the excellent sprite work here. It's a pretty decent Arnie, as you'll see shortly. As for the driving, shooting levels, these were fairly quickly done with coding duties by Andrew Deakin, a well-known name for sure on the scene, with Operation Wolf, Rambo 3, Renegade 3, Operation Thunderbolt, Robocop 2 and the Addams Family. With graphics work done by Ivan Horn, who did Combat School, Arkanoid Revenger Daw, Operation Wolf, Rambo 3, The Vindicator, Operation Thunderbolt, Renegade 3, Robocop 2 and the Addams Family. And yes, as mentioned earlier, Jonathan Dunn on the music and sound effects. Although I think you need to have 128k of memory on your CPC to be able to hear the music, sadly. Sorry, 464 owners, without the additional memory extensions. But anyway, that's some damn fine Ocean pedigree and talent there. As we kick off level 1. And off we go. Sorry, I didn't read out the pre-level 1 preamble there. But yeah, off we go. Hitting some switches there. Hit the yellow switch there, but don't hit the pink switch, otherwise that removes the platform you're going to be jumping on over the whatever that I guess the lava there, and hit the red switch. There's timer switches there to turn off lasers with a flashing P there, and that's the first item we need to find there, the briefcase. And there are 5 items we need to find on this level to complete the first level. Question marks there to pick up. They're always a random item. This time we only got extra points, which is a bit of a bummer. And you have to be exactly centre of the lifts there if you want to use them. I'm already struggling there, even though I'm a pretty seasoned player of Total Recall. There we go. And our first real puzzle there with the switches to work our way through getting the... I think that's the ticket. There you go. The ticket to Mars. There you go. Our first gentle introduction to a bit of a puzzle solving with the switches. And it gets a bit trickier from here on out. There you go. They do fight back the enemies there. We've got the punching dudes, and the guys have guns, and there's a trickier armored protected guy that shoots extra bullets at you as well. So there's I think there's like 3 types of enemies. Oh, and a robot, that sentry robot that shoots at you. Oh, and we've got the surgical tool. There we go. We've got 3 items already. There we go. Oh, there's the sentry robot. So I think like 4 types of enemies there. Right. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Oh, there we go. And we got the disguise. There we go. Right, there we go. 1 more item to find. And this is where it starts getting a little bit tricky with figuring out where to go. And this is where I had to start making some notes about how to beat the level. And a little bit of puzzle solving with the lifts there. There we go, extra energy there. And very important that you get that yellow switch flipped. Otherwise, you're not going to get past that yellow section there. There we go, get rid of that guy. Saving my bullets a little bit. Oh, he fought back a little bit there. Now, bit of timing there. You've got to be very quick. And some difficult jumps there. There's the passport. That is the last item. And now all you got to do now is get to the end of the level. We've got all the items. Might as well get the extra energy there if we're quick. So there's the P, flashing P there, which is the timer for those energy gates. Oops. Some extra bullets will be useful. And there we go, we've got 36 shots. To change between your fists and the gun, you have to do fire and down at the same time, which can be a little bit awkward. You don't change between like ducking and all that kind of stuff. But yeah. There we go. So we've got a lovely Arnie sprite there. One of the best Arnie sprites, is it? I don't know. You've got competition between Predator and unfortunately Red Heat in terms of which is the best Arnie sprite. Certainly this is the better Arnie game out of those 3. Actually, probably the best looking Arnie is probably in Red Heat. The less said about that game, the better. Sorry, GP, aka Pat McKnowles, if you're watching this, member of our community. But yeah, actually the Predator sprite was actually pretty good as well. There we go. We've got a gun power pack there. It shoots more powerful bullets. There we go. I like the death sprite there. Looks like a giant tomato sauce packet has exploded from their chest. Quite bloody. Yeah, nice little bit of gore there. So we're just working our way around here. I mean, yeah, I don't know how to describe. If you're watching this video, trying to work out how you beat this game, I don't know how to really help you, really, just by talking to you. You just have to watch and make... Oh, this is a difficult jump. That's a difficult jump to make there. I don't know how to tell you how to beat this. I had to make notes and break it into chunks. Oh, here we go. Here's the driving section. Make sure you pick up the green E's and shoot pretty much all the vehicles that come at you, and it restores your energy, top right, or slows down your energy draining down. So as I was saying, how to beat each of these platforming levels, I just had to make notes as I go down. If I read out my notes here, like for the red gun power pack section, drop down and bring lift up, go down the second lift, go right and change red switch, come back and power off the laser, go up lift to the left of it, then move left and jump across. Hopefully you jumped at the right bit to fall and pick up the gun power pack and change the pink switch, then work your way round back up and get to the exit. Those are literally my notes I've just read out there. So I just had to play through it, figure it out, and make notes as I went along. Thankfully, there is a map to the level on the cpc-power.com website, which will help you out no end. And that's how you're going to beat Total Recall. So use the map from the CPC Power website. Don't shoot the orange ambulances here, by the way. I think pretty much shoot everything else on this level, and it's dead easy. Stick bottom left by the looks of it, if I remember correctly. Don't shoot the orange ambulances. Shoot everything else, and if you look top right, your energy pretty much stays where it is. And this is actually a pretty easy level. And pick up the green E's when they come flying at you. And just keep shooting constantly. You got a yellow bar creeping up, top left there, showing you how far you got to get to the end of the level. And then there's an end of level boss. So it's a nice break up in the action from the platforming sections. And here's the boss. It's got a set pattern. Uh, 15, 14 hits, 12 hits left. 9 hits to kill him. Keep bottom left. And he only shoots when he's at the top and coming down left. There you go, dead easy. If you see how I dispatched him there, yeah, pretty easy there. There you go. For level 3, I've got lots of notes to this one. Video briefcase holds within a starting revelation. You are Hauser, and the answers to all your questions lie on the red planet. So, yeah. Right, what I've written down here. At the top, past all the red on-off lasers, jump off the edge with the pink switch and keep going right to the next pink switch and switch it. Yeah, so just watch what I'm doing here, really. Yeah, make your own notes from it. So let's talk about some stuff. Magazine reviews. That's what we'd like to talk about. This was reviewed in the May 1991 issue 68 of AMSTRAD Action magazine, and they really liked this one, awarding it the coveted Master Game status, and they even gave it the front cover. Special mention was given to the graphics, and especially to the digitised pic of Arnie on the loading screen. Was it digitised or just really well drawn out? They liked the difficulty level and the longevity of the game, despite marking it down for the following a somewhat tired formula. I guess it's the Ocean formula of I don't know, a platform game, platforming levels with, and then a driving level sort of thing. I don't know. Oh, if it's a tied formula or not. They awarded the graphics 89%, Sonic's 78%, grab factor 90%, with staying power 87%, with an overall AA rating of 91%. Although, why this review so late in May, we're pretty sure this made it out in January or February at the latest, I don't know. But then, a demo of the game appeared on the cover tape of the April 1991 issue 67 of AMSTRAD Action, so maybe not then. Spectrum magazines reviewed theirs in March issues 2, so who knows, maybe Ocean wanted to give this a bit of a boost in the post-Christmas sales slump? Don't know. So, we talked earlier that we figured the AMSTRAD version made it out for like January, February. But maybe instead it made it out in March, maybe even May then. Who knows? Anyway, it was also re-reviewed again on budget in the October 1992 issue 85, and they slightly lowered the score to 90%, but re-awarding it Master Game status once again. There we go. Magazine reviews for the other versions. We got the ZX Spectrum, Crash, issue 86, then March issue 1991, awarded it 94%. And Sinclair User, issue 109, in their March issue, gave the Specky version 91%. For the Commodore 64, Zap 64 issue 71 in their March 1991 issue gave it 76%. So not so hot there for the Commodore 64. And there you go, there's level 3 done there. And we got another driving section here. As for my review, we'll do my review before we get to level 5. Considering the dire circumstances surrounding the project and stressful short time frame, it's pretty amazing what they've pulled off here. I mean, James and Warren could have made a pretty bog-standard platformer shooter, but the mazy, complicated Switch puzzler must have taken a lot of working out, especially not to constantly softlock players all the time. Although there are maybe 1 or 2 places where that can happen, and yeah, actually, it's quite a few actually. So the game on both the AMSTRAD and Speccy actually engages a surprising amount of brain power, way more so than any other version. This may be off-putting to some who just want to be Arnie and just shoot things. To be honest, as a kid, reaching level 3 was achievement enough, and seeing how tough that was and dying there had me going, yep, that's enough for me. And I was pretty much done with the game after that. There's some pretty unforgiving jumps you have to do, and some will find this overly hard, especially because you only have 1 life. Although on level 3 you can find a continue pickup. Really, there's only 3 levels in the game, and the 2 driving levels are short and overly easy once you've figured out how to beat them, as you'll see here. So possibly the difficulty was ramped up somewhat on the platforming levels to extend playtime. Oh, and the ending, which you'll see shortly, is pretty extremely disappointing after all that too. But it's been very competently put together by skilled people who know what they're doing with the machines in their hands, clearly. I'm not quite sure it deserves its Amstrad Action Master Game status, but it's still a very decent game with plenty of challenge. So I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10, or an 85% score. I think that's fair. And there you go. As we fight the end of level boss here. And he's got a very predictable attack pattern which doesn't change. So yeah, he's got a pretty, yeah, you can see where he starts shooting and know where to avoid. 5 more hits to kill him. I think it's Benny here. Bye, Benny. There you go. You have located the rebel hideout. So this is the final and last level. You now know that Kuato is the one who can further enlighten you. You must seek Kuato deep within the caverns of Mars. There we go. I think we start off in Venusville. Girls, girls, girls. There we go. Go to the right here and save your ammo on the first 2 guys. Use your punches. Ammo's in short supply. Oh, there we go. We've got the first item. Alien item. Okay. I don't know quite what that is. Looks like a hook of some description. And then we want to work our way to the left here. So, okay. All right, okay. Watch out. It's quite a tough section, this. And you have to be very precise with your jumps. It's a lot harder than I'm making it look here. And yeah, you got to be very, very specific where you stand and move the screen onto. It's yeah. You're gonna need to practice this level a lot. Okay. Oh yeah, you're going to end up falling into lava here. You get lots of oxygen to pick up. Just pick all the oxygen up on this section as you move along, and you're going to drop down here, and you're never going to go back up to the top again. So you might as well just pick up all the oxygen on that top section. Okay, and yeah, okay. And now just work your way all the way to the right, and then just drop down here. Okay, there's your next alien item. So go back upright and go down the lift to get more oxygen. And keep that oxygen and energy level topped up. Ah, yes. Because Cohagen has turned off the fans and the oxygen supply. If you remember the latter half of the latter end of the movie. Right. Okay. Oh yeah. I don't quite know what that little silver thing is. It doesn't actually seem to do anything. You don't get a little text message there at the bottom there telling you what that was. But we picked it up anyway. Yeah, make sure you hit the pink switch there. There's another alien item. There's a difficult jump to make. Don't worry if you don't make it. You get another chance of the lift there. Just says alien item. Not quite sure what that is or what the symbol is meant to be. But hey, we got it. So we've got 3 of the 5 alien items so far. Okay. Difficult jump here. Don't be tempted to get that item there. We need to turn on a switch there to get a platform that goes across there before doing that. Would you just jump down here first? Right, okay. Right, hit that yellow switch and then go left. And we'll drop down here. Now we've got some nasty jumps to do after hitting the red switch. And some lasers to avoid. Now, at the end of this long play, we're going to show you a cheat mode and also a funny little mode as well, an extra bonus mode. Both of them enabled by typing something into the high score table as a bonus bit of extra footage at the end of the video. Just a short few minutes as well. And also a little glitch that you can exploit as well as a little bit of bonus footage. Might as well collect the oxygen supply here if you can. You're not going to use it again. Don't worry too much about the yellow switch, I think. Oh, yeah. It's fine. It's fine. There we go. Oh, yeah, you did need to worry about the yellow switch. Sorry, my apologies. Otherwise, you won't be able to jump back up there. Okay, make sure the pink switch is enabled so you can have these platforms to jump up. And then you need to work your way all the way back up. And we've got the 2 more alien items to get. Don't worry too much about jumping in there. Save yourself some oxygen to pick up on the way back. And now you can get that alien item there and the 2 oxygens. Because you've got that platform to land back on. There you go. 1 more alien item to get, and the final lift up to confront Cohagen and turn on the oxygen making machine. Here we go. The last item and the final lift. Just do the switches there. Go on the lift. Well done, Quaid. The alien reactor has been started and an atmospherical miracle has happened. The evil Cohagen is no more. Hurrah. That is the end of the game and that is all you get. That's it. Wow. Well, I guess there wasn't any more time left to get an ending done to the game. I guess it was like, done and dusted. Right, get the game out. That's it. We're finished. We're washing our hands, completely washing our hands of Total Recall. We're done. Get a game out. Ship it. Done. And I don't blame them. Speaking of which, thank you again to James Higgins, Mark R. Jones, Simon Butler, John Meegan, and Bill Harbison for taking the time to talk to me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And I hope you've appreciated this video as well. It's taken me a very long time to put this all together and to make. It's been many months in the making. And if you enjoyed content like this, please do consider supporting me on Patreon and joining the AM Squad. I'd very, very much appreciate it, and I look to do more videos like this again in the future. And we got regular long playing reviews and AMStream live streams on Friday on my YouTube channel, and I stream Monday to Thursday on Twitch as well. Anyway, we're going to have some additional content here. Here's a fun little glitch that you might be able to abuse and use. Probably won't help you much. Look at this. Sometimes you get shot and fall through floors and walls. There you go. There's also a hidden cheat mode. Get a score over, I think it's 100 points, and then type in "the end is nigh" in the high score table. And the cheat mode is active, test mode active on the title screen there. And it's changed the name of the game to Total Rewrite. Yes. From Total Recall to Total Rewrite. Yes. Very apt indeed. And during the game, press the big return key to change levels. There we go. Haha! And we have now skipped forward to level 2. There we go. And then we can skip forward to level 3 as well. Fantastic. There you are. Excellent. Now, as another cheeky thing to do in the high score table, type in inactive space mines. Oh, cheeky dig at active mines there. Not active mines, inactive mines. Oof. Oof, big oof. And you'll find your game being a bit crippled here and hindered. Now the sprites are all a flickery mess. And it's horrible to play. Oh dear. Oh dear. It's even worse. On the Specky version, it's even worse. The same thing makes the gameplay at half speed. A naughty little dig at the poor Active Minds team. Oh dear. There you go. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very, very much for watching. Give us a like and a thumbs up and subscribe and all that stuff. Thank you very much. Take care and goodbye. Bye. Bye.
See you at the party, Richter.
So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please click a like below, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. And over that way, there's another video for you to check out. Zypho out.